Warning, bad jokes, bad language, bean farmers, and overly sexual humor will follow. Also, there are spoilers for the first 4 chapters of Eragon, Book 1 of the Inherent Cycle by Christopher Paolini. Listen at your own risk.
Is this a podcast or is this just fantasy? Reading good books is our escape from reality. Open your eyes, look into the books and read. We're just two nerds and we love our fantasy. Yes, we love Hogwarts and Game of Thrones, 7 dice, little gnomes. If you want to nerd out, time to start the podcast and see. Anyway, here's the show.
Hello, readers. I'm Dane Patterson, and welcome to our first episode. We don't know what we're doing yet, but don't worry. A little bean farmer doesn't either, and he's the main character.
That's true. And I'm Jacqui Lanier, and is this a podcast or is this just fantasy? The podcast where the blacksmiths are friendly, the butchers are assholes, and everyone for some reason is fuckable.
So fuckable. If you'd like to support us, then please rate us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. It's so important to new pods, and we would really appreciate it.
Yes, and feel free to visit us at isthisjustfantasypod.com. It's a website. I worked pretty hard to make it. I like it. And you can find our sweet merch there, along with bonus content and photos of our faces if you're like me and have a burning curiosity of what somebody looks like after you've been listening to them for hours on end.
And since this is our first episode, we wanted to start off by introducing ourselves.
Yes. Hi. Hello.
Hello. Yeah. Hi. There it is.
Okay.
We got that out
Nailed
of the
it.
way.
Check. Next item.
Exactly. I'm Dane. I've been a fantasy nerd for basically my whole life. In fact, I played Dungeons and Dragons, and I've played Dungeons and Dragons every week almost since I was 14 years old.
Can confirm.
Yeah, it's almost all consuming, but more than the all consuming Dungeons and Dragons, I've been a deep lover of fantasy novels. And it really all begins with this book series, Eragon. When I was young, I struggled reading because I have dyslexia pretty bad. And like most kids at the time, it was the 90s. They didn't really know what they were doing. It was the early 90s. You'll be fine. 90s. Just read harder.
This is the letter A. Learn it. That's what we call an Easter egg.
Yeah. But what I did struggle through in the early 90s was my first Harry Potter books.
Oh.
And I didn't really retain or understand any of them after my first read. But when I read this book, something clicked. It totally changed me. I remembered this, and I love this book so much as an 11-year-old.
Oh.
And I was like, yes, I succeeded at finally reading, and that is all attached to my experience with this book, my feelings for this book.
Oh.
So Eragon, in a real way, seriously changed my life, and it's pushed me to continue to struggle reading, and now it's become a whole part of my life.
Yes.
So this is a huge part of my life. I love this series so much. So when Jax and I were talking about doing a podcast where we would do a book club, kind of.
Yeah.
I knew we had to do this series first, and also with my longtime friend Jacqui.
Yeah. That's me.
Yeah.
Solid transition. Look at you go.
Oh my gosh.
Dane, you really make it sound very wholesome, very nice. For the time that I met you, yes, around this, I think I was 10, maybe you were 11 or 12.
Yeah, maybe 12 or you were 11, somewhere around there.
When our families met and became friends, it was much more awkward and weird than that. We were weird little kids.
We were weird little kids?
Yes. Yeah. So I think I met you right around the time you were getting into Eragon.
Yeah.
And I do remember meeting you and having a pretty quick, okay, game recognized game. This is a guy I can talk to about how many times I've read Harry Potter, how many times I've read each book, how much time I spend pretending that I am Harry Potter and go to like potions class.
Oh no.
So I really remember like meeting you, understanding that like I did not need to feel awkward talking to you about this. It was something you were already into. Around that time when we were kids, you also gave me the book Eragon. You were like, oh, you're into Harry Potter? You should read this book I have about dragons. I think you're going to like it. And I was like, okay.
Was that your voice back then?
I think so.
I love it.
Pretty close. I don't know. Did it just sound kind of like this?
It kind of sounded like this.
That makes sense. So my kind of fantasy villain origin story, if you will, starts with Harry Potter. I am like a loud and proud, dyed-in-the-wool basic bitch. I was raised on Harry Potter. I had a teacher in 3rd grade who read Sorcerer's Stone to our class like for 15 minutes every day after lunch, and I've been gone since then. I was hooked. That was it for me.
Your poor parents.
I know.
They lost one so soon.
Oh, I know. I guess I've always had like a pretty obsessive personality. My mom definitely says that I was like this even as a kid. I know I'm like this now.
I was like, you think?
Yes. No. I'm aware now. But my mom can confirm that I also was like this as a kid. And with Harry Potter, with my first like intro into fantasy books, having that kind of expansive world where it felt like if I wanted to dive in, I could be there for a while. I could obsess about it because there were always more layers. It was always more fleshed out.
Yeah.
That was really appealing to me as a little weirdo who already loved to read, but like this was my thing where I was like, oh, I'll just be there for a while.
Yeah.
And I remember meeting you like, and I think that was that like, the weirdo in me recognizes the weirdo in you.
It was like an escape for you though, is what you're saying.
Yes, for sure. So, about 2 decades later, I'm still here to read anything with dragons and wizards and pick it apart and analyze it like my life depends on it.
That's good because this show
That's kind of the vibe we're going for here.
It's definitely what we're shooting for. This show is going to be weekly podcast where we pick a series and we're going to read them in a section of around, I think, 5 to 7 chapters a week.
Okay.
And we're starting with Christopher Paolini's Eragon, which is the first 4 books in the Inheritance Cycle, and I think a 5th book is going to come out. So we might do that one too.
Yeah.
Wow. As this is our first episode, we want to start with what to expect. Normally we'd start with a recap of last week's episode and chapters, but we don't have a last episode yet, so we can't do that.
Yes, that's a plan. Plans change. We'll see.
We'll see. Who knows? After that, we'll just do a brief excitement, disappointment thing. We'll talk a little bit, and then we're just going to do like basically a book club. We'll go over the review of the chapters. Jax was going to walk us through kind of an analysis of the themes in each section we read and the book in general. I'll do some historical or contextual tidbits. So will you.
Yeah.
And we'll come up with like research for this podcast. I don't know what that will look like. And then I'll do a deep dive on specific world building, crunchy stuff.
Yes.
Or maybe stuff we've heard.
Professor D&D over here is going to do a little crunchy overview of things. I think in fantasy, you kind of want a little backstory. So I think we want to incorporate that for sure.
And sometimes you get like magical or like anything all in like spread out over many, many chapters. I'll put those together.
Yeah.
And then we'll wrap a segment we're going to call What Are the Haters Saying? Where we, talk about what the haters are saying about the book, and we'll give our final thoughts on the chapters. And at the end of each show, we'll just let you know what chapters we're going to read for the next episode so you can follow along with us.
Yeah.
But in this first episode, so that can change, we're open to any suggestions. So this is not like a written stone. Send us some emails. So if anyone is listening to this, we want to make sure it's a show you want to hear.
Yeah.
So come through with your thoughts, and you can email us at isthisjustfantasypod@gmail.com. And as far as spoilers go, we've both read these books before.
Yes.
I have read them a bunch, but we're aiming to record these episodes with a fresh perspective. So it'll be a no spoiler podcast. Obviously, the chapters we're going to talk about, there'll be spoilers. But other than that, we're not going to go ahead.
No spoilers for anything ahead of what's the content in that week's episode, I think is the plan.
Yeah, and I think after that...
Yes, I'm ready to get started with this first section of Eragon. Are you?
Yes, let's do it, man.
Okay. I guess for me, before we dive into chapter summaries, it feels like such an interesting, like, deja vu kind of experience to pick Eragon up again after so long. I will own up, again, very proudly, very basic, to rereading Harry Potter, like, I don't know, every couple of years, the series start to finish.
Yeah.
But I think I've only reread Eragon maybe once in my adult life, and I think that was when Inheritance, the 4th book, was released. So I think with Eragon, it was more of like I would pick the series up and reread it to the point when a new book was released.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's kind of my backstory. So I feel like it's interesting. I forgot there was a prologue when I picked it up this time. I totally forgot that's like our very first window into this world.
It's shocking. By the way,
yes.
that
And
prologue.
then, I forgot how quickly, he's finding the egg and we're hatching the, it all is going so much faster than I remember, I think.
Yeah, it goes quick.
Yeah.
I think for me, this feels like coming home. I love this cold opening, like right to action.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm ready. We got magic. We got monsters. We got like hot chicks right out the gate.
Yes, so many hot chicks. 11-year-old Dane really needed the hot chick.
But a standout in this section is Sloan. He's just such.
Oh my God.
He's such an asshole right from the
Yeah.
get-go. What is up with the uncle? I'm just curious. Like,
Well, that was the thing I feel like when I picked it back up, we're reading, I texted you and I was like, was Guerrilla written to be a villain?
yes, like Paolini.
At first, like, what is happening?
Like, we need to know Paolini was, like, if you're listening, was he originally supposed to be the villain man? Like, I don't know what is going on.
Yes, I definitely caught some vibes from him that I do not remember at all from when I was a kid. Like, maybe not evil, but definitely not like the warm, loving, adopted dad or uncle. Uncle dad.
Should we call him an uncle dad now?
Father uncle.
Father uncle. Yeah, there we go. Garo is father uncle from here on
yes.
out.
So yeah, I definitely didn't get that that from him as a kid. I remember thinking, oh, his nice like dad.
Yeah, it didn't stick with me until we were adults. You're absolutely right. I'm always impressed by how like well thought out this and big this first book feels, especially when you consider just how young Christopher Paolini was when he wrote it.
Yeah.
On that note, though,
oh my gosh,
do you want to jump in and start picking apart this bad boy?
Oh, I'm a little scared. You know what they say, pick apart the things you love.
Yeah, nothing can go wrong.
Until they're unrecognizable. That'll be fun.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
Well, Dane, start us off to summarize the chapters.
All right, here we go. The prologue. This book starts out with one hell of an action sequence.
Yes.
We fade into dark forest during the dead of night. I'm sorry. When ambush has been set by a shade.
Yeah.
We don't know what the heck a shade is, but it sounds metal as hell.
Yes.
This guy has red hair and red eyes.
Ooh.
And his goons are these large, horned, smelly monster creatures called Urgles.
Gross.
Yeah, they're pretty gross. Anyway, these 3 elves, decked out in dope armor and riding beautiful horses, walk straight into a flawlessly executed ambush without much trouble.
I mean, yeah, I guess like the Shade definitely does not seem like a good guy, but he seems like he knows what he's up to. He's about his business.
He's competent.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the Shade guy is good at what he does, and I appreciate that. And they're unknowingly trapped pretty much right away when, boom, both of the male elves are killed pretty instantly, and the remaining elf spurs her horse to escape, but they're hemmed in on all sides.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Things get even crazier as the forest ignites into flame. Magic is flying all over the place. Some of the Urgles, those big hairy horn dudes, are closing in, and time is running out for our girl. And we find, I don't know why I'm picking sides, but I want her to live.
Well, one of the people is ambushing.
Yeah, nice looking people.
Nice looking people riding on horses and lighting shit on fire. And the other one of the people is only running away.
Yeah, exactly. So go girl. And we finally find out why the Shade is obsessed with her.
Because she's hot.
It turns out she's got this giant blue stone, and I'm dying to know if it's hollow for some reason. She takes the elf gives up, trying to get away, and rips out the big stone. When, boom! A green magic explosion happens, and the blue stone disappears right before the Shade shoots this elf with his red magic.
Interesting.
Yeah, so
Do
she
the colors
did it.
have meanings? We don't know.
I don't
There's
know.
no way to find out.
Who can say? So she's down, but the stone is gone, and the Shade goes into like a crazy rage and instantly murders all of his hairy horned Urgle buddies that are still alive. And as soon as he realizes the stone is gone, and man, let's be real here, he got played by the smoke show of an elf.
Well,
Mad respect.
I mean, he was too distracted by how hot she was. Also, I will say, he might be good at setting an ambush. He might be competent, but he does seem like he'd be a shitty boss.
Yeah, he does seem like an aggressive manager.
Yeah. I think I'm getting big middle management vibes from that guy.
For sure.
Very worried. He seems like he's on a power trip, trying to show off for corporate. I don't know
Also,
about him.
Just there's nothing cool about burning down a forest.
No.
There's nothing cool
That's
about
bad for
that.
the environment, sir.
I mean, come on,
Get a
Shade.
grip. Well, that does lead us to chapter 1,
Okay.
titled Discovery.
Ooh.
So finally, it's been so long.
Okay.
Finally, we meet our main man, or almost man, the rapidly aging
I mean,
teen dude.
Yeah.
His name is Eragon. And as we're introduced to this guy, I feel immediately suspicious that we don't know how hot he is.
It is not
Now,
described.
they took great care to describe to us how hot that elf was in the prologue.
The most beautiful woman in the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this guy, no idea. He's just out here in the world running around.
Just a normie.
Yeah, well, maybe. He might be super hot, Dane, but we don't know.
You gotta keep
I
reading.
feel uncomfortable about that.
we just
In this
stop
book
here?
specifically, considering how everyone else is described, this is weird.
Yes, it is odd.
Yeah, so Eragon is hunting down a herd of deer to provide what seems like some much needed meat for his family. So right off top, we know Eragon's situation is humble. His family doesn't have a lot, but he is skilled enough to contribute to their situation, which is good. And he has no qualms about getting himself through this like sketchy sounding mountain range to do that,
Right.
to accomplish that goal. There's clearly some lore here about the spine where he is, where he's out hunting.
Yeah.
Seems like people are distrustful of it. It's implied that like some crazy shit happens up here.
It's like spooky.
I think so. Yeah, it's definitely like he seems like he's from the small village, and the people there do not enjoy the neighboring mountains. It's not like a fun hiking, biking,
Yeah.
skiing in the winter kind of a mountain range.
No, it's more of like a don't go up in Death Mountain. You
Yes,
know?
exactly.
Yeah.
And so Eragon is kind of thinking through this and stalking a deer through the woods.
Ooh.
And he's just lining up like his perfect dead on target shot on this like 10-point buck, thinking about, wow, this is a weird place, but I've always been fine, when lo and behold, a bang of magic happens and a big ass polished blue stone appears right where he was about to shoot his doe.
Do you think it's the one from the prologue?
Bum, bum, bum. That's where the chapter ends. So you're going to have to read on to find out.
Okay. Well, chapter 2, Palancar Valley. Eragon is out there after he's collected the polished blue stone.
Yes. Missed the deer, though.
Yeah, he did.
Importantly.
He did not get the food.
No.
Yeah, so he can't be that good.
But he's got a big rock.
Yeah, I mean, that should definitely be as worth as much as the meat.
We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see. So Eragon's out there in the spine, like way out there, and it takes him 2 days to hike out of the mountains. And I just like cannot imagine doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Like just hiking for days on end to get out
dude.
of.
As a 15-year-old, just being like, couple nights sleeping rough.
Just killing some animals.
Yeah, no.
No.
That's you and I were raised from that. Our hometown might have felt small, but it wasn't like this.
No, and he's kind of a badass here.
Yeah.
On the third day of hiking, he gets into town of Carvajal,
Okay.
which is his local town, and he wants to buy some meats from the local butcher.
Okay.
And the local butcher's name is Sloan.
Nice guy.
Yeah, well, the butcher is a major asshole to Eragon
Weird.
for seemingly no reason
Yes.
at all.
Reading this back, I was like, holy shit, just right off the bat.
Just quick.
Shocking.
But what's even crazy is he gets even madder when Eragon tries to sell him this new mysterious blue stone to Sloan in
Yes.
desperation.
Yeah, he's already mean for no reason. He's like, your family's starving. I don't care. I hate you.
Yeah, I don't shit. And then he's like, I don't know. I think this is a great idea. But as soon as he says it's from the spine, Sloan's like, no, get out.
Yes.
Okay, this is what's crazy about this stuff. Eragon is saved by the blacksmith Horst.
Yes.
Who is fetched by Sloan's daughter, Katrina.
Yes.
Okay. This basically reveals that everyone thinks Sloan is an ass. Like even his daughter, because she would have had to leave as soon as she saw Eragon enter. It's insane.
Yeah. She just watches a kid walk into her her family shop, and
Yes.
she's like, this probably isn't gonna I bet dad is about to fly off the handle. I better go get reinforcements. Like, what?
Does he do this every time Eragon walks in and she's like, uh-oh.
Every time anyone walks in?
What the hell?
Also,
Okay.
this poor girl, she's really She's really trauma bonded in this situation to like really be on top of it like that. Just no thought.
Right.
Fix the situation.
So anyway, horse buys meat for Eragon on the promise that Eragon will work it off by helping him in the forge. Also, horse might be like a big baller on campus or something.
Yes.
Basically like strong arm Sloane.
Yeah, so he's just like, bitch, sit down.
Yeah. You're not going to sell to me, Sloane? Anyway.
Yeah.
Then Eragon, as if he didn't have enough on his plate with the whole mysterious blue stone thing and the butcher who wants to kill him, and now he's going to play matchmaker.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he gives Horst a verbal love note from his cousin, Roran.
Yes.
But it sounds to me like they've been raised together, so
Yes.
I'm going to call him brother cousin.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So
if Garrow is father uncle,
yes, then
that would make Roran brother cousin.
Brother cousin.
That's how families work, right?
Yes. I mean, you don't just call
I mean,
him
not
brother.
mine. We're not like that. It's not incest related.
No. It's more of just a fun moniker to tell you how they're related.
Okay.
So this brother cousin Roran. So we learned that the second woman in this story is also the most beautiful girl in town.
Oh, of course she is, Dane. Why wouldn't she be?
Yeah.
So this is Sloane's daughter, Katrina, right?
Yes, and
Okay.
Roran fancies Katrina, Sloane's cool daughter. And he just like relays this message to Horst. And then Eragon goes home, which by the way is 10 miles by foot. 10 miles.
From the town?
From the town.
To the farm.
Just a quick jaunt.
Oh my God, I think I fully glazed by that. Reading through. I was like, whatever, it's several miles. They live outside of town. And
They're like out
10
there.
miles?
That's out there.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I don't know. By foot? Anyway. So we meet Garrow.
They're isolationists is what we're learning.
Yes, they do not want people on their land, it sounds
No.
like. So we meet Garrow, Eragon's father uncle, and Roran, the brother cousin, finally.
Yes.
And I gotta say, Garrow is kind of written as a creeper here.
Yeah.
The word choice really implies that Garrow is a thin, creepy dude.
Yep.
Garrow is instantly mad at Eragon for taking charity
Oh, yeah. From Horst, right?
from Horst, because he's
Oh.
like, we don't take charity. It's like, I just got home.
Sir.
Yeah.
Hello, I've been gone for like a week
In the
camping
mountains.
in the dangerous mountain range.
They tell stories about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Eragon calms him down by showing off his new fancy blue stone.
Wow.
They decide they're going to take it to the traders that are coming to town soon for their
Yes.
seasonal visit and see if they can sell it for some money. And we also learned that Sloane's wife died in the spine. I think he's kind of asking like why like Sloane won't take this.
Why Sloane like freaked out, basically.
Yeah, Eragon's asking Garrow, and
Yeah.
Garrow basically says like Sloane's wife died in the spine. She fell down a waterfall, and that is why he thinks the spine is cursed. And,
Fell down a waterfall?
I mean, I think frankly,
How do you fall down a waterfall?
you don't go chasing waterfalls.
That's a lesson I learned young.
And frankly, we've only met Sloane once, but I can already say my best guess that his wife did not fall. She jumped.
Oh, you're a Sloane's
Yeah.
wife truther.
I'm just saying that we've met him only one time.
I'm
like,
just asking questions, you know?
yeah. Why did she go up there to die? Anyway, I think maybe the grumpy husband Sloane that the daughter like gets people for because he's an asshole might have been a good motivation.
And that's an interesting thought.
That's my first take.
That's a spicy one.
Yeah,
We'll see.
okay.
Just an alleged suicide. Casual.
Possible. I don't know.
Well, that does take us to chapter 3, Dragon Tales. Now, this one's meaty, so buckle up.
Okay.
Lots happening
I'm
here.
strapped in. You don't have buckles on your seat? No? Okay.
No, weirdly. I'm just sitting in a cozy armchair.
Oh, me too.
So we're finally getting to see Eragon's life on the farm as this chapter starts. So he's waking up the morning after his big stone hunt.
Okay.
And he's thinking, and I quote, "This was a special day."
Okay.
And what this big anniversary is that he wakes up thinking about, ruminating about this very special day, is that on this day, 16 years ago, his mom, Selena, came here to her brother's farm, pregnant and needing to hide out. Again, absolutely vital to note before we get too far. I can tell you want to say something, but give me a moment.
Yeah.
Selena was very hot. She was beautiful.
Oh, Selena was
She was
hot
a
too?
dime. Yes.
Hell yeah.
And so Eragon wakes up on this pretty bleak anniversary.
Well, hold on. I only celebrate the day that my mom found out she was pregnant and went to her uncle.
No. Her brother.
Her brother, excuse
Your
me.
uncle.
My brother.
We have a really tenuous grasp on the way familial relationships
We don't
work.
even celebrate my son's birthday. We celebrate the day we know that his mom was pregnant.
Absolutely.
You don't do this?
No.
It's a very special day.
No, we're like normal people who celebrate birthdays.
That's true. This is a little weird.
So yeah, Eragon wakes up on this bleak anniversary thinking this was a special day.
It's weird.
On my reread, I'm like, special, my guy? How? Anyway, we learned that Selena, this is all through Eragon's like internal monologue, just running the track back through what's been happening. We learned that his mom, Selena, stayed with Garrow and Garrow's wife for the next 5 months.
Okay.
Until she gave birth to Eragon. And like any new mother, she got super intense about getting Garrow and Marion to promise to raise her sweet baby boy if anything should happen to her. You know, hot on the on the birthing bed. I love you so much, my angel son. Brother, promise me you will care for him.
Hey, if something were to happen to me, you'll watch him, right?
And Garrow and Marion are like, we don't need to, that's crazy. You're here. You look great.
What would happen?
You look so hot right now. What could possibly happen? And so she keeps on about this, it sounds like, for a few days. And as soon as Garrow and Marion promise that they'll take care of Eragon, she absolutely pieced right the fuck out of Carbajal for the rest of forever.
No.
This is what Eragon's remembering, being like, on this special day.
Oh, that's so sad.
5 months before this horrible thing happened. So we find out through Eragon's internal monologue that Marion is the one who told him all of this backstory on her deathbed a few years before like this book starts.
Okay.
So you just know there was some serious sister-in-law drama happening in that family.
She's like, come here, my good for nothing sister-in-law.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
But up until that point, he thought that Garrow and Marion were his parents. He did not know that he'd like been adopted. That Garrow, so that's why it's like Garrow was kind of his dad, but also his uncle.
His father uncle. Classic father-uncle situation.
Father-uncle situation. And somehow, as Eragon's thinking about all of this, the only thing that bothers him is that he doesn't know who his dad is.
Yeah. That sounds right.
It seems like you have bigger fish to fry, maybe, where you're like, where your mom might be, why she might have left you, but I guess that's your business, Eragon. We will not pry.
He's like, yeah, but what about my dad? My mom was hot. Was my dad hot?
I just wish I knew who he was. And like, understandable, of course.
Yes.
But also, just zero introspection about like, I'm so sad. The mother I knew has gone from this world, and my uncle is my father, and my mother might be alive, but none of that.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Just who my daddy.
Because she could be alive.
Yeah.
You would think he would be thinking about where might she be?
Where'd she go?
Yeah.
Did anyone try to find her?
No. That's
be crazy.
Yeah, no.
So as Eragon is getting ready for the day, headed out of his room, shows up for breakfast with Roran and Garrow, we get our first good description of the brother cousin Roran.
Okay.
By which I mean we find out that he's also a hottie with a body.
Hell yeah.
Yes, we love that. Eragon shows the stone to Roran over breakfast, and he really doesn't seem to give a shit about what I'm assuming is the most like expensive thing he's ever laid eyes on in his life.
He's like, cool. Did you send my message?
Yes, literally. He's too obsessed with what happened between Eragon and Katrina the day before. He's really not happy that Eragon delivered the message to Horst.
Well, he's
like, why are you outing all my business to everybody?
It's like secondhand sexting or something.
A little bit, yeah. Eragon's like, Horst is chill, not a big deal.
Could you imagine, by the way, a grown adult relaying love messages to you as a teenage girl?
Ew. No, Dane,
it's
that's
super weird.
That's sexual assault. I'm pretty sure.
No, from a horse perspective, like a man being like, your teenage boyfriend loves you so much.
No, that's weird. I don't like it.
It's really weird. Yeah.
So we start to get some glimpses here of life on their idyllic farm as like autumn's fading into winter, which mostly means just a ton of vegetable prep. They're weathering their first snow and being cooped up inside, wondering why that annual caravan of traders that they want to sell the stone to, they're really late this year. So like usually I think it seems like the traders are there before the first snow.
Okay.
And we get fully snowed into the farm for like several days.
Okay.
And no sign of any traders. So they're a little worried about that.
Ooh, trouble's afoot.
I know. So when the snowstorm passes, they finally catch sight of the traders' tracks in the snow.
Yay.
And our three dudes pack up all their saleable merch and head into the big city to finally talk to anyone besides each other.
Yeah.
Seemed like the situation on the farm was getting rough between these three taciturn farming gentlemen.
Three dudes just
Yep. That's correct.
being weird.
Yes. So once they went to town, Garrow gives Eragon and Roran some money for treatsies and takes Eragon. Yeah, this guy, we're like, this questionable fucking guy.
He's like, yeah, boys.
Here's some money for treats. It's like, okay, maybe he's nice.
He's not that bad.
TBD. But he takes Eragon to find the trader they're hoping will buy the stone from them. This is a man with an incredible name, Murloc.
Ah,
I love it.
classic. That's a good one.
Yes. As they walk around, they're noticing that the traders are looking like a little raggedy, a lot comfortable with a lot of like knives and weaponry.
Yeah, they look like worn down, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking like trouble on the road, mayhaps.
Some bandits, maybe.
Yes, but
Okay.
once they run into Murloc, he takes them to his back room to assess the stone.
So this isn't Murloc's first like shady business dealing.
I know, and I'm like, Eragon, Garrow, were y'all born yesterday? You never go to a second location. Cardinal, have you ever seen Dateline?
Yeah,
You
seriously.
never go to a second location.
So funny.
So they go with Murloc and they're all assessing the stone, and we find out two things.
Okay.
Even though the stone seems to be like this blue color with white veining, it's all made out of one of material that seems to be like harder than any diamond or anything.
Okay.
And also, no big deal, it is hollow inside.
What?
Yes, I'm just wondering what could possibly be harder than any rock or diamond and hollow in the middle.
No, history's mysteries right there, Jax.
I don't think we're ever going to find out.
I don't think this is attached to the main plot of this story at all.
I don't think so. I think we should offload it and get to business planting our winter harvest.
We got rutabagas to grow.
So Murloc says he can't buy the stone from our crew because even though he knows it's valuable, he can't risk not being able to flip it for sweet resell. He cannot get caught holding here.
Yeah, he's like, hey, look, man, I can't hang on to too much merchandise.
Yes, I got to keep my assets liquid, brah. So they're trying to decide which of our Spine Mountain hating townsfolk might be able to take it off their hands as they keep going. I know there's like a big festival about, so they're like, fuck, who are we going to get rid of this for? We could really use the money for sure.
Yeah, they're in a tight bind. They look, it kind of sounds like they're not doing well.
Yeah, for sure. So the festival night programming continues. They have, I think, dinner at Horst's house, and stop through Morn's Tavern where we pick up a lot of hot goss.
Oh.
About this chaos that seems to have engulfed the continent of Allegasia where they live in the last few months. So the traders definitely have been caught up in some trouble on the roads.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we get a lot of interesting political rumblings from the outsiders who seem to be pro-empire and our townspeople who have what I would call a healthy critique of the imperial system. I think it might be described actually as like a bone deep distrust for the empire and its ruler.
It kind of makes sense. They're far out there.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean?
And as everybody settles in for their after dinner story hour, we hear from the very run of the mill and not at all intriguing town storyteller Brom about the empire's sordid founding at the hand of a dragon riding psychopath named Galbatorix.
I don't know. I feel like I agree with one of those guys in the end. This is all just propaganda a little bit.
You think?
Well, I mean, the government is not supposed to protect everyone. You know what I mean?
I think they say that. They're like, well, the government can't make everybody's lives better. What do you think they're there for?
It's pretty funny.
Yes, truly insane.
I mean, they got I'm just kidding.
They're like, no. That tax money you give us is for other stuff, not to make your life better.
It's so funny.
Yeah, the people of Carval are like, please get out of our town.
Well, after story time, they go back home. And chapter 4, Fate's Gift. This chapter opens, it's very short, by the way. It's only 2 pages.
Okay.
I love these type of chapters. As a new reader this time, I was like, ha, I can do this.
I made it. I did it.
I can do this no problem.
Yeah, that's so cute.
Yeah, so this chapter is short, and Eragon, it starts with him, hitting the stone with a mallet. As you
guy.
do. So funny.
I'm like, of all the things, the most I think for some reason it really does not seem to be sinking in with these farmers that this is the most expensive thing they're ever going to see in their lives.
I mean, Morlock kind of said it's like priceless.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Anyway, at home, as soon as he
bangs it with a mallet.
Yeah, as soon as he's alone in his room, he bangs it with a mallet.
Oh.
So solid thing, you know. I don't know what you might have, but I have to say Eragon is a curious dude.
Yes.
He wants to find out.
Yeah, that's
Anyway,
fair.
Yeah. So after banging it with a mallet, he's like, well, time to go to bed. While Eragon is trying to catch some Z's, he's woken by the stone moving and making noise.
Oh, uh-oh.
The stone falls off of its
Doesn't
shelf.
it like squeak?
Yes, it rolls, and he realizes the stone isn't a stone at all,
Stop, Dane.
but an egg.
No.
Yes, who would have guessed that?
Never could have known.
There was a dragon inside the whole time.
What?
And I remember, okay, this is so
In
funny.
this book with a dragon on the cover?
Yeah, I was so surprised. What's funny about this is I remember getting to this spot as a kid and being like, freaking finally. When
4 chapters in and you're like, oh, I've been waiting for a dragon for so long.
Yes, it was like my first read through. I was like, come on.
Dragon.
Where's the dragon? So funny.
You're like, deer, no. Slow, no. Hot girl, no.
Who cares about the hot girls?
Rutabagas, absolutely not.
I don't care about that. Yeah. So,
Oh my God.
There we go. The bean farmer has found a dragon.
Okay, and that's where we leave our chapter summaries for this
Yes.
first episode.
Yeah.
Which means it's time for me to do a little like light Bush League analysis, literary analysis.
It's time for analysis.
So usually when I'm reading, I'll look out for bigger picture themes and like recurring ideas throughout a section of chapters or a whole book. And I think what really stood out to me in this opening section of Eragon was the idea of changing worlds. The section is, I think, in so many ways, such a solid foundation for the rest of the book and really the whole series.
Okay.
Because so much of Eragon is a pretty classic coming of age tale. I mean, it was written by a literal wunderkind, and it is worth, I think, talking a little bit here about how this book came to be. So Christopher Paolini, the author, graduated high school through a homeschool program when he was 15, and he'd been writing, I think, towards the end of his high schooling career, but instead of going straight on to college, he wanted to do some sort of a project. He was very into writing, and he was also very into art.
Okay.
So I think he actually did the original cover art for the Eragon book.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, but he did lean harder into writing. He was like, okay, well, I have some of this story down already. I'm going to really give it a go, give it a serious try and write a novel. And so he sat down for the next couple of years. He finished writing the manuscript for this book, Eragon, and his parents formed a publishing company. They'd published a couple books before this.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so they had kind of a team of editors give it a look over and self-published the book when Christopher was only 17.
Oh, wow.
And then from there, it got pretty popular pretty quickly, got picked up by like a bigger national publishing house, and then was like kind of repackaged and polished up a little bit. And it went on to its like release that you and I would remember, like kind of the sensation it caused.
Yeah, it was kind of like this like a young kid writes books situation.
Yes. So that all of that happened when Christopher Paolini was 18.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
That's wild.
To me. Yes. I think worth noting here too. And it's just the funniest fun fact to me so far in what I've looked up about like Christopher Paolini stuff he said in interviews. So in the original version of his manuscript, his first like shot at writing this book, he's like, okay, yeah, definitely dragons, check. Magic, check. Right. Like young boy going on an epic and adventure filled journey, check. Right. Elves, check.
Yeah.
Urgles, check. Shades, check.
Yeah.
And he's like, what should I name my protagonist, my main character?
Yeah.
And he's like, I think Kevin. I think it's going to be, I think he's going to have, Sloan, Roran, Garrow, Horst, and Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin.
Kevin the dragon.
I wish this book
Dragon wizard
was called
boy.
Kevin.
Yeah. It'd be
With
so
the dragon
good.
on the cover.
I do think that's very funny. Would have been a good name for an epic hero
What
of
choice.
ancient legend.
This is Galbatorix.
Yes.
And this is Kevin.
But I think too, Christopher Paolini's backstory, like, I think that's what really speaks to me here about this idea of it being like a very truly and like emotionally resonating version of a coming of age tale.
Okay.
And then I think the piece of it in this section that comes through the most is that idea of changing worlds that I was talking about. So I love that the cold open in the prologue is such a glimpse into how fantastical the world can be, because we kind of smash cut from there and get really comfortable with our main characters. In the rest of these first 4 chapters, we're seeing how uncomplicated their lives start out. So it's a big contrast, and like we're primed, I think, for the world to change in a really big way here.
Yeah, just like smash cut from magic to a deer hunt. You know what
Yes,
I mean?
exactly. So what we're really watching is the beginning of this shift in all of their lives from something that's ordinary to something that's going to be extraordinary. And I think the arrival of the annual traders and all this talk of political upheaval is changing their world too in its own way, from something that's kind of like tranquil and small and pastoral to now something that's like more complicated, maybe has bigger implications, is like maybe grittier. There's something afoot, it seems like.
There's a bigger, wider world out there.
Yes, exactly. So I like that's a part of the plot here. I think there's just so many different ties to this idea that come from different areas of this opening section. One of those things, I think it was such a smart choice for Christopher Paolini to start this series in this pivotal, like late autumn season on a farm, where the seasons are going to be very important to these people, obviously, because because of that, all of our settings and activities keep reinforcing this like change in the air kind of feeling, from the literal first snow to the arrival of those traders, to their stories of the outside world changing around them. So I think that seasonality is a really good like reinforcement of this theme.
Yeah. And it's also awesome from like a historical perspective, right? Like we got, like clearly this is a portrayal of a feudal society.
Yeah.
We have these peasant types who are heavily reliant on the seasons for their livelihood.
Yeah.
It's like demonstrated in the chapter with Sloane that like it's pretty difficult, right?
Well, part of why he's so jarring too, I think, is because it is grounded in that sense you have of like a somewhat realistic culture from the past, where like these people would be very reliant on each other. So for him to be so dismissive, you're like, okay, well, that guy's bad.
Yeah, to be mean is even weirder.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the setting is also intertwined with like the seasons, as you said, like because we have like if you didn't make it or acquire it before winter, and you like tough luck until next season. That's kind of like when they're in the house, like worried about the traders, is kind of what's happening. And then that creates the tension that the characters are struggling with food and trade and finances for marriage. And I must say, I'm loving it right off the bat now.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think a lot of these choices on Christopher Paolini's part are really smart to kind of reinforce all of this. Even the story that Brom tells in chapter 3 is such a huge change in how we've kind of been set up to view the world up to this point. Like, you kind of know they live in a country and they're removed from it in this small village, but the story is about a huge change that happened in the world before Eragon was even a glimmer in that hot woman's eye. And all of a sudden we're being told this like kind of hushed up but amazing story. It's got everything. It's got dragons, it's got magic, it's got murder wizards, it's got wars, it's got elves.
Yeah, doesn't Garrow imply that you get like disappeared if you tell the story?
Yes, dude.
Okay.
And it's almost whiplash fast how we're going from this ordinary small town scene to a mythical clash between like magical good and evil. And I remember reading this as a kid and having that feeling where your mind kind of starts racing. You're like, oh shit, when am I going to get to like explore a little bit? When am I going to get out there in that world?
Yeah.
Is it time? Is it time? Is it time?
Now you see my like finally moment at the end of this section. Like,
yes,
come on.
I could see that. Like, it definitely piqued my interest. And I think it's such a good, again, like tie to what the world can be, what it maybe is outside the borders of where we start, which is so ordinary. I think it's that contrast that makes it seem like, oh, this is just a small boy on his farm, you know?
Yeah.
And another thing I want to talk about a little, so that's, I think, where I'll leave that theme of changing worlds.
Okay.
Another thing I want to talk about a little bit is this kind of recurring trope that keeps coming up in this section. If you did not pick up on my ultra subtle hinting during the chapter summaries, I find it very funny when we run into that like paragon of fine fantasy literature that everybody is so fuckable. Everybody is so hot.
It does come up like a lot in this first section.
So much.
Yeah.
I'm just like, well, if they're not hot, what's been the whole point?
That'd be true, right? We all agree?
Yes. Little 11-year-old Dane definitely probably agreed. But I will say, okay, even with this, there's a slight sense for me that, like, while very silly, of course, it feels like maybe a piece of this coming of age puzzle in a way. I think like when you really think about Christopher Paolini's age here, there's something almost like growing pains ish, like awkward phase, growing up, puberty, like about looking around for the first time and being like, wow, is everybody like kind of hot? Am I kind of like into everybody?
Oh my gosh. This is a real insight into your coming of age.
No, I think like as you grow up and you're trying to work out like who you like and what you like and why, and you're just looking around and you're like, well, what is it? Like, is everything a possibility? Is everything kind of on the table? And then he's writing this world being like, well, she's hot and she's hot and she's hot.
I think especially like if he's read a lot of fantasy, just the trope that this is the whole fantasy genre. So I think it's like a little bit better because a lot of those books were written by like 40 and 50-year-old men.
I guess that's what feels like, specifically in this book, why it feels like such a young author thing to do. There's definitely the sense for me that like a little bit, okay, well, this is like a 15, 16-year-old. But then I have that gut check realizing what a trope it is. And I'm like, well, at least it's a 15 or 16-year-old doing this.
That's
at
what
least.
I mean.
I think that's totally right. That's a good point. So to wrap up analysis, I just want to say again how into the beginning of this book I am. I think it's so fun. I think there's so much here that's really well thought out and well set up for anyone to have written, let alone a 15-year-old. And I hate to keep harping on about how young he was, but it just doesn't stop being impressive to me for the few places like in this set of chapters where maybe the focus is a little meandering, and we're going along on some tangents. I think we're really watching a young author find his voice, and I think so much of it does set the stage for what we're going to continue to see. And I think it reads to me more like any author's first stab at writing versus like, this is just a kid writing this.
I totally agree. Like, this is my Harry Potter in a lot of ways. And I have to say that even I understand the criticisms about the writing in this book. I think it could be a little better, but again, he was younger and the setup is fantastic. And you nail the slow opening of wonder that is taking place and the seasons. It's just a great start to a story. And yes, again, the crows could be a little tighter and more polished, but it doesn't take away from the story at all here. Because I think it's a strong setup. And I think if you're coming in blind, there's a lot here that's like, whoa,
dragons.
There's a dragon, you know?
Amazing.
So despite its flaws, it slaps, baby. Okay. You know what I mean?
Slaps.
It slaps.
Oh my God. Well, I mean, I wouldn't pick that turn of phrase, but it is a strong agree for me.
It slaps.
But, but I guess I'm also like shamelessly into Taylor Swift and the brain bleach that is a Hallmark Christmas movie.
That is true.
I don't really know what that says about me.
Well, that I think takes us to our first deep dive?
Yes.
All right.
Deep dive, Dane.
We're going to do it.
Deep dive.
So we learn a lot of things in this section, and the most important of all of this is that Eragon, Garrow, and Roran are barley, rutabaga, beets, peas, turnips, and bean farmers. So most important. Keep in mind as we go forward through all of these books in the story that all of this is happening to bean farmers.
Most important. Okay, so just really keep in mind there's always going to be money in the bean stand.
There's always going to be the beans to fall back on, all right? So in all seriousness, we get two big breakdowns here. We get a political and national look at what's happening in the Empire and who the Varden are. And the second is who this king is and what his deal is. And there's some information on the Dragon Riders, but I want to get into that next week because there's a lot to unpack there. But I just want to stick to these two topics. So first, let's break down what we learn about what's going on in Alagasia right now. Alagasia. Yeah. The traders tell Eragon several things. The Empire is dogged by misfortune.
Yes.
That's the literal quote.
Yes, does seem bad.
Not great.
No.
Over the last few months, the Varden, which we learn is the anti-imperialist rebel organization run by a mysterious leader outside of the Empire's borders.
Amazing.
So terrorists is attacking the Empire and its people more than is normal. And because of these increasing attacks, the very honorable and like proud leader, King Galbatorix.
Honorable and proud?
Yes, he's our emperor.
Wow.
He's our king. He's our king. He's sending soldiers to the country's borders, and this movement of soldiers to the border has left people on the empire vulnerable internally.
Okay.
And they're vulnerable specifically to the Urgles, who, as of yet, we've not really been explained. They're just the tall, horned monsters we saw in the prologue.
Okay.
I guess they've been traveling through the empire towards the desert, going through populated areas and forcing like regular villages to like flee.
Oh, that's probably bad.
It's not great.
We don't love that.
Yeah. It's not great. To make matters.
Well, you were wondering in the prologue who you should be rooting for.
I'm just saying, they're not great. I don't like them. I like that elf. I don't know what these Urgles are about. But to make matters worse, not only is the local population battling the Varden at the borders and the Urgles within as they go towards the desert, but there's also a rogue shade roaming the land.
Ooh.
Yeah. On top of that, the Varden has established a spy network to disseminate false information.
Those assholes.
I know, about the king and country in an attempt to incite public discontent.
Oh, right. So
Yes.
that our good and noble king, if you do hear anything bad about them,
Yes.
it's just the terrorists and their spies
It's
and
the
their propaganda.
It's the fake news media.
Great.
Yes, it is the fake news media. So to add to the chaos, they're totally slandering our king's name. To add to the chaos, there are rumors circulating that the Varden Urgles have formed an unholy evil alliance.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
An axis of evil, if you will.
Yes, to orchestrate offensives in tandem. Yes. So everyone seems to know what a shade is, and they seem really scared about this.
Yes.
Which makes sense, as we did see in the prologue of this book. He burns a whole forest.
Yeah, that is
subdues
bad.
magic using elves, kills a score of Urgles, all within what do you think, 2 minutes?
It does seem like it, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, probably to that lady elf, it felt like 2 hours, but to us, maybe 2 minutes.
That horror show was very bad.
Yes. Ugh.
But what is a shade? I have so many questions.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think there's some inferences we can make, especially based on Christian and Greek mythologies. But at this time, I think it's best to bookmark that.
Okay, put a pin in it.
Just like the Urgles,
Oh, great.
we know nothing about the shades in the book so far.
I know nothing about nothing so far.
That's very true. But, they're bean farmers. We know that.
Okay, that's true. I'll always remember. Never forget.
Never forget the beans. It is important to note and credit Christopher Paolini for this. The traders who are more connected to the Empire, unlike the people of Carvajal who are out in the boondocks, seem to really believe in their king.
Yeah.
And they tell Eragon and his fellow villagers that the Empire is being protected by King Galbatorix, but also acknowledge that he cannot protect everyone. It's not the government's job, Jacqui, to make everyone's lives great.
I always forget that part.
But rather to ensure everyone is protected the most they can be.
Oh.
Get the most
They're not
you can.
there to protect everyone, but just to ensure everyone's protected.
Well, just the most. You can't help everybody.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
But just a few sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes you miss the things, This is great for 2 reasons. Because we're told by Brom in the same chapter that Galbatorix is kind of the guy who ended the Utopia situation with the Dragon Riders. Propaganda, it sounds like to me. And we learned that that the people get disappeared for telling that story.
Yes, do you think Brom's a terrorist?
I think Brom might be a terrorist.
Uh-oh.
I think the people get disappeared because
Not the
this is
Old Town
propaganda
storyteller.
pushed by the Varden.
Not the Old Town storyteller.
I know.
He's just a nice old man.
He seems like a nice old guy. So what are we being shown in Eragon's perspective is different from the average Empire citizen.
Yes.
I think that's important to note here. We can take that. The second thing we learn a lot about is the king of the Empire, Galbatorix.
Yeah.
Galbatorix was born in a place called Inzelbeth, which no longer exists.
Definitely doesn't sound like an evil name of a place to be born.
I bet the churches and flowers of Inzelbeth were the most wonderful of all. He was then 10 years old when he was tested to become a rider, and he displayed great power and magic right from the start.
Okay.
Galbatorix was more skilled and gifted than any of the other trainees.
Wow.
And he rose up the ranks quickly to become a full-fledged dragon rider.
Okay.
His ascent was actually so rapid that some of the riders were concerned, but they eventually allowed it.
Interesting.
Yeah, after graduating as a full rider, top of his class, Madam Cum Laude, Galbatorix went on a trip far north, a little leap year, if you will.
Oh, yeah, just a quick little gap year, backpack through Europe.
Exactly.
He worked hard through college, and he deserves a break.
He's in New Zealand, right? So he took a trip far north of the Spine with 2 other riders and their dragons.
Fun.
Spring break. While they slept, They were ambushed.
Bad spring break, like one of those spring break abduction stories.
Yes,
We're doing a
exactly.
little bit of a Taken kind of a
Exactly.
call Liam Neeson.
It has gone wrong. All the dragons and riders are killed except for Galbatorix. He killed all the attackers afterwards in retribution, I would imagine, but was left traumatized by the loss of his dragon. He walks back by foot past the spine, and during his travels, he meets a shade who teaches him dangerous and forbidden magics.
Ooh, spooky.
Galbatorix continued his journey until a farmer found him. Do you think it was a bean farmer?
All the best farmers are bean farmers. Everybody knows that.
Everyone knows
Dane, duh.
Duh.
Can't believe you even asked. It's so embarrassing.
You know
for
what?
You.
I'm so sorry, everybody.
We should just call it here.
Yeah.
We tried.
It was we gave it our best. We gave it our all.
No, we have so much more shit to talk about. Everybody, buckle up.
Right. So the bean farmer nurses him back to health, and the same farmer summons the dragon riders. He calls help.
Okay.
And Galbatorix is rescued.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. However,
Airlift.
Yeah, he's airlifted out of the spine, it sounds like. However, it's clear that the loss of his dragon and his time alone has kind of driven him a little mad.
Oh,
Just a touch of madness.
Uh-oh.
And when he requests another dragon from the riders, they deny him his request.
Yeah, they're like a hint of madness is not really our brand.
Yeah.
So
We think maybe pause on that.
we think maybe we should not give you access to a powerful and eldritch beast.
Yes, exactly. Well, surprisingly, this rejection convinces Galbatorix that the dragon riders are to blame for his loss.
Weird take.
He changes his strategy, and Galbatorix meets a rider whom he convinces to help him with his force of will, and personality, and his evil shade magic that he learned on his travels. And together, he convinces him to help him, and together they kill an elder dragon rider that Galbatorix blamed for not getting a dragon. After which Galbatorix...
Some light murder?
Yeah, he then kills his accomplice.
Oh, shit.
And flees.
Oh, that's bad.
Yes, so
that's got to be bad.
Yeah, it's not great. So he lives in hiding for several years.
This is our good and just king.
Well, this is, again, remember, propaganda,
This is the propaganda.
probably.
That's right,
yeah.
that's right.
And despite being hunted by the dragon riders, they fail to locate him. And eventually the dragon riders just give up. And they're like, we forget about him. He's probably, gone.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Years later, a rider named Morzan finds and befriends Galbatorix.
Well, he just seems like a crazy old coot.
Yeah, he's just a wild guy.
Yeah.
Well, Morzan agrees to help Galbatorix steal a new baby dragon that is hatching by leaving a gate in Urobane open.
Okay.
After they steal the dragon, they kill the young dragon's bondmate.
Oh.
Then Galbatorix starts to teach Morzan evil forbidden magic.
Oh.
And Morzan eventually leaves the riders and becomes Galbatorix's new apprentice.
That's bad. That's got to be bad.
It's not good. Once Galbatorix's black dragon that he stole, Shrukin, was fully grown.
It's a cool name.
It's pretty cool. Shrukin is that's a dope name.
Yeah.
I think it might be the best name so far in the book.
Shuriken?
Shuriken.
Better than Murloc?
You know what? Murloc was better. Shrukin was fully grown.
Or Kevin.
Or Kevin, actually. And Galbatorix and Morzan go on a rider killing spree, getting powerful after each kill. And by doing this, the two gather to them 12 more riders who decide that they would rather learn and gain power with Galbatorix than stay true to the order of the riders. These 12, along with Morzan, become the 13 Forsworn.
Oh, you love this.
Which I have to say, Galbatorix and the Forsworn is kind of a badass name for a punk band. We're Galbatorix and the Forsworn. We're here to rock. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, wow.
It sounds, I don't know. Sounds dope.
Oh, wow. Keep that on the short list for the punk rock band name.
That just sounds dope.
Do we play any instruments? You and I?
You and me?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, how are we going to form our punk rock band?
Well, we'll get 12 other people.
Okay.
And
through the force of our
collective
of our will and personalities, we will convince them.
Our evil magics we know.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Perfect.
I think it's important to have a plan.
Yes, we have to know where we're going. With his 13 Forsworn, Galbatorix killed all of the riders, forced the elves into hiding, underhandedly killed the leader of the riders, Vrail, on Utgard Mountain.
Okay.
And after Vrail's death, Brahm said, and I quote, "Then as power rushed through..." That's not right. Then as power rushed through his veins, Galbatorix anointed himself king over all of Alagasia.
That's Brahms' voice?
I don't know. I feel like that's got to be Brahms' voice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's a bold... Choices are made.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, you gotta make choices. I've learned from Galbatorix that you have to make your own destiny.
Okay.
Yeah. So the simplified version goes something like this.
There was a simplified version?
Yeah, the whole time.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, Galbatorix, a former dragon rider, lost his first dragon, went mad, learned dark magic from a shade, stole a new dragon, killed or ordered the death of every other rider and dragon, forced the elves into hiding, and conquered Alagasia, becoming its king.
Wow.
Yeah.
Super chill dude, it sounds like.
Yeah.
10 out of 10, no notes for our wise and just king of the empire.
Born
Emperor
winner.
king?
Born winner.
Yes.
Emperor
that's that guy.
king. Yeah, he's an emperor king.
Okay.
He's a high king.
Okay.
He's Galbatorix.
Okay.
Anyway, this guy pulls him up by his bootstraps.
Oh my God.
He proves it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Oh my God. So we're doing like how to win friends and influence people, Alagasia edition by
Yes.
by Galbatorix.
100%.
Great. He seems like a very fun guy at a party.
He does, but also remember, this might be terrorist propaganda.
Well, it is terrorist propaganda,
There
right?
it is. You heard it from Jacqui first. All right. Next, we're going to go to what are the haters saying?
Okay.
Actually, you do your research, huh? Have you even read it?
What are the haters saying?
There is an index in
That's
back
not totally derivative.
I'm excited to do the first one of the. We've talked a lot about like including this or how we want to address some of this stuff.
Yeah, and for section of the show, which we're lovingly calling what are the haters saying, we want to acknowledge the various criticisms and not shy away from the bad press, so to speak, about this series and all the series that we're going to read. And we want to be clear-eyed about some of the shit while we're showing some love for the material.
Yeah.
I will say Christopher Paolini gets particularly a lot of shit on the
Yes.
internet.
Yeah.
We're going to read other series eventually, but like this, I will say, there is a group of people who just actively and continually hate this. And if you go on Reddit at any given time, there are people talking about how much they hate it.
Yes. So I think that's really what prompted the inclusion of this section. And then the more we kind of talked about it, I think it's a way we kind of look at podcasts that we both listen to that are kind of in this book review, book club type style.
Yeah.
And I think for us, a lot of times they can tend to fall into two buckets where either you have people who just like doe-eyed, like Pollyanna, love these books and like pretend like nothing's ever been wrong with them and all the characters are perfect and everything done is perfect. And that's not necessarily something we agree with. We want to be honest about what we read. But then I think a lot of podcasts too can tend to like really harp on when they're picking something apart, really harp on all the problems with it and want to change it. And we don't want to really do either of those things. We're reading these books because we love them. Yeah. But we definitely want to be honest about like problems that either we've seen or that people point out frequently about these books. And I think the thing that comes up the most often, like in terms of, and the reason we're like, the haters, amorphous group of people, these haters, but I think because this book does get such a consistent level of hate and there's so many different things that people pick apart, it seemed like a good foundation to be like, okay, what's kind of the consensus of problem here? And like, how can we say, hey, maybe there's a point to some of this, or like, I don't really get that. It doesn't really bother me.
And in later series, we'll probably, I myself will probably become the hater to point out some things we don't like, or some things that don't make sense. But you're right. In this one, this is a good place to start on what other people are saying. Yeah, and being honest about it.
And I know it's something you've like looked up a lot to not. I mean, this is not this stuff that you're. Yeah, it's not stuff that you're just like making up. I know you've really gone out of your way to be like, okay, what are the people saying?
Yes, and online for this first book, and I'll start it right here from episode 1. The haters often say that this Eragon book is a ripoff of Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. And we're going to talk about Star Wars today. Okay. The reason this book feels like Star Wars is because the original Star Wars trilogy is a basic hero's journey story.
Yes, that's correct.
It's about as bare bones, too, as you can get.
Yes, Joseph Campbell said so.
Yeah. Right?
We cannot argue with our monomyth dad.
No. So a lot of heroes' journeys could be compared to Star Wars, and you would be hard-pressed to refute that the plot does not seem similar.
Yes.
And that being said, don't at me. I love Star Wars. This is not a dig on Star Wars, but this is also a derivative of the science fiction that came before it.
Yeah.
The author of Dune for instance, was so convinced that George Lucas copied his book.
He almost sued George Lucas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and when I was in film school, it was often pointed out that not only does Star Wars borrow heavily from Kurosawa and his samurai movies, but in later interviews, George himself would say that exact same thing.
Okay.
It's also mentioned in my film school, we study this a lot,
Yeah.
that there was another movie before Star Wars called The Foundations.
Okay.
That movie's, it's pretty clear
I've
Star
never heard
Wars.
of that in my life,
Yeah,
but
it's kind of clear Star Wars might have been inspired by that in some way either.
Okay.
No one brings this up when Star Wars is brought up, and it's because Star Wars is well loved.
it's a good story.
It's a good story,
Yeah.
and I'm not knocking Star Wars. I'm merely pointing out that perhaps the biggest participant of the Eragon book and its series and this work is also something you can say about any hero's journey, and especially fantasy and science fiction that like has wizards and farm boys and elves and dwarves. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So what a lot of people point out is like, this is a series called Star Wars, Eragon's called Eragon, but there's Luke Skywalker and he's a water farmer.
Yes.
And Eragon
Water farmer.
is a bean farmer.
Yes.
And they're both raised by their uncles. Because, Luke doesn't know his dad and Eragon doesn't know his dad. And
Yeah.
That's kind of it so
That's
far.
what we have so far. I mean, there's
We will come
ties,
back.
there's similarities,
Yes, we will come back to this.
Okay.
But I do want to say, I want to quote Christopher Paolini. He said this while he was doing an AMA on Reddit. And
Okay.
here's the direct quote. Of course, I was inspired by Star Wars and also Lord of the Rings, Dune, Eddings, Feast, Tad Williams, Anne McCaffrey, Beowulf, as well as Lucas. I was drawn to the heroic monomyth, and I wanted to write my own version of it as a love letter to the genre. And I really think like it doesn't get as clear cut as that. This is not
Yeah.
a huge deep dive into what the haters say this week, but I just am setting the stage. We're going to come back to the Star Wars thing. Trust me. The whole time we read this series. So it's going to come up often, but I just want to start with like, look, I get it, but the monomyth, the hero's journey, these are things it's not there yet. This is too different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I guess for me, just in terms of that criticism, it does get bandied about a lot of works, I think,
Yeah.
but it's particularly bad with this book. People really, for some reason, are incensed
Yes.
that Christopher Paolini had the gall to write the same story everybody fucking
How
writes.
dare he?
But I think for me, like that criticism on its face, I just find a little shallow and a little problematic. I think there's, it just is a story that people enjoy reading. It is a satisfying arc to watch a character come from a humble beginning or come from a place where they're like beaten down or the underdog, and to watch them learn and grow and change and acquire skills and finally be able to achieve something.
Well,
and like,
The ceiling is so much higher in that story if you start so much lower.
yes, exactly.
You know what I mean? And also, like, the reason everybody is connected to, like, powerful people or deities or magic or whatever is because there's got to be some reason that such a low person can just jump to the top of the line.
Some kind of mechanism to like lift somebody up in your story, essentially.
yeah.
Well, and I think it happens for all kinds of reasons too, in these stories. And I think that's why so many genres do borrow from the monomyth. I mean, I think for me, it sounds really stupid, but it's
Right.
the same way that like a formulaic rom-com makes millions and billions of dollars at box offices. Still, it is a story that people like to watch. They like to watch two people be at odds, misunderstand each other and miscommunicate, and then
Right.
overcome all this to realize they loved each other all along. Like,
Yeah, is it plagiarism, right? Is it plagiarism, or is it just like the plot is a little similar, but because the story, ultimately, there's only so many stories you can tell, so we got to dress it up with all the other information, the world, the characters, those all change.
yes. And is it so fun to read something where you subvert some of that expectation? Of course. Like when that's done really well,
Yes.
there's almost nothing more fun to read than to be like, ooh, I thought this was going to be a thing that it now is not.
I think the First Law trilogy does that spectacularly.
Yes, I think so too. But I think in general, for me, there's nothing wrong with adhering to the formula and like writing the story that feels satisfying to read, watch, listen to,
No.
whatever the case may be. And again, like you said, these are stories that have been around since the beginning of people telling stories.
Right.
They're so ever present in religions and mythologies and like morality tales. A lot of those follow a hero's journey.
Yeah, well,
there's a reason it's called the monomyth.
Well, in film school, I went to film school for my bachelor's degree, and in film school, a lot of what the arguments were about was if there is just one plot. Is there 12 plots?
Yeah.
Like there's a whole bunch of different people who think there's like several. But
Yeah.
there's basically what the arguments always came down to is you can pretty much, if you work hard enough, break every story into the same exact beats.
Yeah.
And it's because like truthfully, there isn't that many, people want to, like you said, see the underdog succeed. And there's normally a formula for how they do that. That feels good.
Satisfying.
Yeah, satisfying to read. So,
Yeah.
we're going to come back to this. We'll talk more about this. But that is all I had for What Do the Haters Say this week.
Okay, that was fun. That was painless.
It was painless.
I'm afraid of the haters a little bit. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, they're going to write us emails for sure. And that's fine. We will take your emails. I will read them all.
Maybe I'll screen him for Dane. He works hard on these segments. We don't want to hurt his feelings.
I'll cry by myself.
Yeah, I think in wrapping up these first few chapters and the prologue of Eragon, like I said, it's been really fun to dive back in. I'm already like stoked, like prepared to get into Dragon Times.
Yes, me too. I was so excited we're doing this, and we're like in a studio. We have a producer named Kevin.
I know. What's up, Kevin?
He wants to be called Eragon.
Yes, since we keep clowning on his name. Unfortunately, we did not make that choice. That was Christopher Paolini.
Yes, so if you ever hear us making fun of Eragon, or Kevin, we're not talking about you, Kevin. We're talking about Eragon. Whatever. I don't know how we're gonna.
I'm confused.
I'm too. But hey, we really love you, producer Kevin.
But I'm glad we're doing this. I'm glad that like we finally have kind of a official outlet to spend hours and hours talking about fantasy books.
Yeah.
Because when we just do it weekly on the phone, it's kind of weird.
Well, yeah. And also, I might even say I would end with just me and Jacqui have been friends. Gosh. Since I was like 11 or 12.
Yeah.
And we've known each other, and we've always talked about books. We've talked a little bit about that. But like we're still friends now. We go on trips together.
Yeah.
We are in a book club actively together.
Yes, we're in a real life book club. And I think the other members of our book club get kind of exasperated when we're like, y'all want to stay up till midnight and talk about this character development? And they're like, no, we have like lives and people who love us.
We don't want to talk for 3 hours about this book.
And Dane and I are like, yes, we also have very kindly partners and families. They just know this about us and let us go.
I almost think
once every so often.
Once they find that we'll do this, they're like, "Oh, good.
Do it together.
You should both hang out as much as possible."
Yeah, we don't want to hear about your fantasy books anymore. I think is kind of the vibe. So we decided to kind of make it official in a way, or do it as an outlet where we've talked to other people in our lives who are like, "Oh, I really like fantasy, but I don't have my own book club, or I don't have really an outlet to engage with people and like overanalyze, take a deep dive into these books that we're reading." And we were like, well, fuck it.
Yeah.
We got some time.
We'll be your book club.
Yeah.
So if you're listening right now, you're a buddy. We're doing a book club together. Come read Eragon with us. It's going to be really fun. We'll talk about it. We'll be real about it. We'll make some bad jokes about it.
We're going to make a lot of bad jokes about it.
We're going to mostly make bad jokes about it.
That's the warning up front. Yes, it's definitely going to be, for as much as we're like maybe self-serious trying to analyze this book or pick it apart, the tone overall definitely is goofy. I think we have no other way to be.
Yeah, the language will be bad every week.
The language will be bad. Most of the jokes will be bad, but that's just a quantities game, as you are wont to say in your real life, Dane.
Yes, quantities over quality.
If you make enough jokes, some of them will be good.
You're bound to land on one of them. And poor Kevin can edit out any of the other ones that we don't want.
Okay, well, I've got to get out of this room with you now and stop talking about this book. It's been a while, until next time in like an hour when we record the next episode. Is there anything you want to shout into the void before we go?
Yeah. Please make sure you rate and review, especially on Apple Podcast. It just really matters to starting out podcasts.
Yes.
I don't know why, but that's what they tell me on the internet. You can also check us out on social media at Is This Just Fantasy Pod on TikTok, or at Just Fantasy Pod on Instagram and Twitter.
Yes, and if you want to keep pace and read along with us as we make our way through the book Eragon, for our next episode, we're going to be covering chapter 5, titled Awakening, through chapter 11, called The Doom of Innocence.
Oh, no.
It does sound ominous. I'm not sure.
We love our fantasy. Come on and listen to us next time. Find out what our deep dive will be.